On The Informer, we're going to catch up with someone we've talked to before. He's a photographer, he's a social worker, he's a guy who understands what it's like to put back to your community. His name is Shayne Hood. He's also a very proud dad. Your son is almost 3. Shayne, welcome to The Informer. Tell us about how you got your own Oscar, mate.
Well, I don't know if you want to hear it or the ins and outs of that, but yeah, no, my son is actually turning 3 tomorrow. So
well, many happy returns.
Thank you. No,
now,
I'm very proud.
Now, Shayne, these are trying times, as we're all discovering, and you do an awful lot of work in the community, especially for the disadvantaged Indigenous children, the young men and women. What have you found out that has been, I suppose, the hardest thing for you to get your head around? Are they coping? Are they struggling with so much of the negativity and anxiety, just like the rest of the community? Or is it even harder? Is it hitting them harder?
Well, I do an array of work with a range of different people and community. So that part of that includes some of our Indigenous or Aboriginal or First Nations people, but a big part of it is working with families and young people that are, I guess, in government systems. And I think the hardest part, I think, is sort of like, I guess, what we're all facing is the uncertainty. There's a lot that we can do in a mental health space when we have a little bit of control or a little bit of an understanding of what future looks like or how we can build future. But the uncertainty is probably the toughest space. But I think that I think there's still ways and means to be able to work around that, though, in the best ways that we can.
Now, do we continue the conversation with Shayne Hood, or do we carry on with Johnny Brixton? Which of the two personas is going to emerge?
Look, I think that probably to make it more normal for me is probably my Shayne Hood, because Johnny Brixton's more of an alias. So I don't think many people call me Johnny or anything like that. But yeah, my name's Shayne. It's great.
Okay, so before we go any further with Shayne, how has Johnny Brixton coped with the lockdown?
Well, actually, I've been able to get a lot of work done. So I'm working on a book at the moment. I'm going to spin my computer around to show you. So these are all of the photos on my wall from my book. So I've been able to collate. Yeah, so being able to collate a lot of stuff from previous trips around America. And yeah, it's been good. It's been good to have the time to do that.
Shayne, from this distance, what has it been like? You've spent so much time in America, and you've seen the country, warts and all. What do you make of the current malaise, the current challenges, the current divisions that are impacting on all Americans?
Well, I spent a lot of time in more vulnerable communities, or I guess communities that are more marginalised. And it was pretty evident that there isn't government support. Like, there just really isn't a lot of government support there. And there's not a lot of funding that comes from government to be able to help people that are experiencing a really poor mental health. But one of the good things that I have to say about America, especially in a lot of vulnerable communities, is there's a lot of community, community-led organizations and community-led groups that are self-funded, that do amazing work in those spaces. And I often don't think they get talked about. And if you walk in the community, they're almost like the pillars of some of those communities. So for instance, I had spent a lot of time in South Bronx. And in the South Bronx, there's community gardens, but there are initiatives where the whole community knows about them, and they're welcomed. People from that are either from experiencing homelessness or in really rough situations, even down to gang members. Anybody is open to these communities or these spaces, and there's just lots of really cool things, like lots of really cool artistic groups. But the cool thing is everybody knows about them in the community, and they're real pillars. And if you speak to people in those areas, they'll lean more to what their community groups are doing than what government is doing. So
It sounds like
that's the thing that was really evident.
it sounds like to me you're talking about collective care.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I know as a Yankee fan, a huge Yankee fan, they have hope days where each year through the season, and some of their really talented and very, I suppose, well-to-do baseball stars really throw enormous amounts of money, because they're making even more amount of money than you would imagine. And they put an awful lot of work behind the scenes to support those disadvantaged groups, because they understand what it means to put back. Are we seeing anything like that in Australia?
I don't know. I think that there is some groups. I mean, Paddy Mills recently,
Oh, yeah?
I think, just started a group. But I think that's definitely something to be noted. And I know that he's poured quite a lot into that space, and I think he's been invested in that for a long time, even prior to this.
Yeah. He's a really special young man.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. And I think that there's a big part of him, like in all many Indigenous or Aboriginal spaces, that is more about self-determination and giving the right to self-determination, as opposed to helping people out or helping people get up or anything. It's more around the rise of self-determination, that it's not that people need help, they just need the right to be empowered.
Okay.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned from being in community.
With that idea of self-empowerment, are there tips that you have that can help them cope and help them look ahead and thrive?
Well, I think in terms of people, I would say people. In terms of different cultures, I think it's best to speak to different cultures around what's appropriate for them. But the work that I have done a lot, and recently with my people that I'm working with, but my own community as well, so especially men in my community, is really around building flexible routines through the day, especially if you're at home. Flexible routines around positive things that make you feel empowered. And the reason I say flexible, though, is it's not about being structured in a routine, because that can bring anxiety in itself. It's around having flexibility and options in what you do during the day. And I think also, especially in a time like this, is allow yourself to feel bad from time to time. Like, it's actually okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel pretty rough in a time like this. It's not all about just being positive and pushing your way through. I think it's actually okay to wind down and allow yourself to feel things. But one of the things, I guess, that I've learned from my own experience is when we're allowing ourselves to do that, also accept how we're feeling. So there's this thing, I don't know if you've ever heard about feeling anxious about being anxious. You're feeling anxiety, and then you feel anxiety because of your anxiety. I think the work that I do a lot with people is around removing that second layer and saying, actually, anxiety is an emotion, and it's actually okay to feel anxious. It's actually okay to feel down, but it's more around that acceptance of feeling that. And then how are we, this is probably a larger layer, but how are we really looking at our values as individuals and leaning towards those in times of toughness? So
do you think we also have to take some of the stigma away there's so many people saying, oh, you know, get rid of your anxiety. People are seeing it the wrong way. I mean, we need to take that stigma away, don't we?
That's right. I mean, how do you get rid of anxiety? Anxiety is an emotion. Like, you can't not be anxious. Anxiety is, from the root of it is the fight or flight response. It's like we have that as human beings, and a lot of those aspects about anxiety are really positive. So it's just more around when anxiety is starting to take over, and we're looking at it as, this is a controversial thing to say, but as an illness rather than an emotion, that it can be a really overpowering emotion, and I strongly believe that there's no issue with getting help with that and reaching out to the right sources with that. But I think it's also having an understanding that it's actually okay to feel how you're feeling, and it's okay that that's arising. And that there is some positive parts to that emotion, and it's not that we can just get rid of it. That's like saying getting rid of anger or sadness or happiness, or you know what I mean? Like, anxiety is just...
Shayne Hood, I'm going to let you get back to the book because I know it's you're almost ready to... How far away is it from release?
Oh, look.
Don't say how long's a piece of string either.
Yeah, well, it was probably going to be my response, but I'm hoping in the next 12 months would be ideal, but it's all depending on current situations anyway.
Right,
but yeah.
Shayne, as always, thank you very much for giving us a few minutes of your time to talk about some of the things that are impacting on the people that you work with week in, week out. Thank you very much. Shayne Hood.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, mate.